not to go forward, and that's frustrating when you think, hey, you've got to score a goal to win a game. Again, we've beaten the horse to death about whether or not you set up and say, hey, we're going to take a draw here if we can, but it is frustrating because you see that a lot of times. You hope that a team can play quick, have attacking ideas, but when you see a team that turns around and passes the ball back because they know they're not supposed to go forward, that's frustrating.
And I think we saw that. I sent out a tweet that you all gave me a lot of flack for, but in that first half,
I don't think it was just us.
Oh, no. Everyone. Yeah, no, it's fine. But it's fine. I was watching a game in which I watched players work the ball up the field, and we had a couple different set pieces that were directly into their box that Gressel unfortunately just sent way over. We couldn't make a play off of. But there was another play when it was Gressel and I think Moreno were literally passing in and out the box with each other because one of them would go to take a shot. It wasn't there. Gressel ended up kind of making that shot or it was like a shot cross that Kamara just didn't get at the end of. And immediately after that happened, New York City had like two very apparent opportunities. And I think this goes kind of back to what Black was saying. Like, we pushed forward and we tried to get those opportunities, and then we were almost punished for it. So we reverted back to this idea that we just didn't need to get scored on. But I did see us be able to work it up the field. And I think that if we get those key pieces and leaders back and we have the confidence and we're able to kind of move it up the field and we're given the freedom to do so, I think that this team has that possibility.
I have nothing nice to say, so I'm not going to say anything at all.
Well, when you talk about going forward, go ahead, John.
No, we need to key in on where these goals are going to come from. I mean, this isn't a formation that's set up too heavily for scoring success, unless you really think both Gressel, who has proven that he can be a wing back in Atlanta, but also Paredes, who really hasn't played that position a whole lot. Where do the goals come from? That's really where I'm struggling, and I don't think we saw anything exciting tonight except for a couple passes getting strung together and then pulling out of an attack.
Yeah, and you're totally right to ask where the goals are coming from. Some of us on this podcast have been on record of saying that Kamara is going to create a set number of goals this season, and I think game by game we see that slipping away. And you heard from Ben Olsen tonight talking about how he felt it was a little unfair to Eric Sorga that he put our new international slot signing Rivas in up front, which came across as a little bit odd to me because he's the one making the decision.
Yeah.
If he thinks that Sorga is the guy who has earned the chance to be up there, then by all means play him over the guy who hasn't trained with the team yet. But again, we didn't see a whole lot from Rivas in the few minutes he got. Again, Kamara looked frustrated to come off, as you would expect. None of our attackers are really getting the job done. Even Segura, who moonlights as a forward, came off near halftime for O'Neal Fisher. This is it's a question we've had throughout the hiatus, and moving forward is, do we have the strikers that we need in this team? Maybe we need to take more of a look at it. Maybe we need to get more minutes for some of these other guys. But right now, the goals aren't coming from anybody. So throw anything at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, so we have a question that came in the chat a little while ago from iSpy, and they're kind of asking, is this the game plan going forward? Do you think that you all think that we're going to switch it up, or you think that this is how we can expect, this weekend to go, but then assuming there's games announced after that, the rest of those games to go too?
Yeah, so my not nice thing that I was going to say is that we don't have any attacking players that are injured that are going to come back, right? Paul is out for the season. Flores out for, I think, the season, or at least the season that's been announced. So
Felipe out. I understand he's not an attacking player, but he did build up a couple plays.
On this team, he is. So no, I don't think it comes back unless maybe you could say that, like, with the better defensive players back, Ben Olsen is willing to open it up a little bit more. But we heard the players say they played in a 5-4-1 with Kamara just up there to direct the center backs of the other team away. They didn't plan on attacking tonight. I think the plan of attack will not probably come until next year. And Black, you talked a little bit about the striker situation. I don't understand the Rivas yet because he's a traveler. He's an unproven goal scorer recently. He scored maybe way back in his career, but he's older now. He's a pickup. Sorga just scored. I don't know why he didn't get any minutes tonight, but he's also unproven. Kamara probably has less confidence than either of them because he keeps blowing these chances. If you're not going to be a creative striker, that's fine. You just have to finish the chances when they get on your foot. And he's gotten at least a chance in the past few games to put one away and has not done it. maybe that's because he's only getting one chance a game, but it's unacceptable. So I don't know where the attack comes from. I think if DC United, look, I don't want to jump back in that hole, but if DC United ship Hamid, they should just restructure everything. Just rebuild everything.
Well, when you talk about a game where you had no shots, it's very hard to say, hey, we're going to get this guy his confidence back by giving him opportunities when you're not creating any opportunities across the board, even when you pull them out. It's a very difficult situation if you're a striker who depends on having that kind of confidence. I don't actually know if that's the issue with Kamara because we haven't seen a whole lot.
He was one-on-one with the keeper against Red Bull. And I could probably find one for every single game before. And I know, like I said, it's just one, so maybe that's the problem. It's just one chance a game, and so he's cold. I don't know.
Yeah, and going back to
could he benefit from help up top? I mean, now that you've got
he's got Segura up there with him,
and you could argue about quality and stuff. Segura's not a striker though, right? I mean, I recognize that's where he's being deployed, but if you put two strikers up top and you've got Ola and Orga, who I would put up there, or even Ribas at this point, would that maybe change things a little bit and take some of the pressure off? Because what's frustrating for me looking at Ola Kamara is how many times you see him truly in the defensive half, or at least the middle third.
Yeah,
he's not able to spend enough time in the attacking third, and obviously part of that's because the team's defending so much. But even in possession, he seems to be almost falling back more into a 10 role, and well, there's no one forward for him to then pass the ball to, so we have to play backwards, and then that gives time for the other team to drop back on defense, and then what do you do? So I don't know. That's the only thing that comes to my mind is obviously you're going to take some defensive pieces off the field in order to do that, but what would a second striker do for Ola at this point?
A lot. I've been arguing for years that this team needed to deploy a second striker because we've never had the type of striker that you need to deploy a one striker system. Like, let's look at Josie Altidore pre-World Cup injury. I'm like throwing it way back, but like he is that big guy that was able to hold the ball and let the rest of the team rush around him, and then he was able to make passes off and like make that back spinning run and then score the goal. Like, that's what you need in that forward and single striker position, and we have not had those guys who are just able to hold up play and wait for the team to flow in around them, and we keep trying to like convince these strikers to do so, and it's just not the case. So I think that we need to get another striker, we need to throw them up there, and we need to play with two up top, and they don't need to be together either. They need to be diagonal, so one of them can drop back into the midfield when it's necessary, and then they have someone to pass forward to. Just holding it up, sorry. For the people watching live.
But no, you're right, Sam. They can't be the same type of striker, and I think maybe Rivas might have been the build that you're talking about, the hold-up player. But I think they would just be two disjointed strikers playing by themselves, because behind them they have a defensive mid. You can't put a striker next to a D mid in a soccer alignment and not.
Well, you don't have five in the back when you have two up top, right? You have four, and then you have.
I wouldn't be surprised
and
at this
two,
point.
and you have those kind of. I would have those stagger a little bit, and I don't know. Ideally, you don't have a flat back because you're adults. I don't know. I don't know. That's how I would position the team, and I've been saying for years that we just haven't had the striker to be able to do that, and it's frustrating to me to watch it, because even Wayne trying to do that, right? Like, he would come back, and as John just said about what Kamara was doing tonight, Wayne would come back and be in our defensive half, and then there's no one to send it up to for the entire rest of the game, and that's why you're not being able to move up the field and create offensive options, because there's literally no one up there to have that option for.
And getting back to the question that our commenter posed was, is this what we expect going forward? Looking at the table, DC is in 10th, which is not great.
It's a playoff spot.
But this year it's a playoff spot, and frankly, you're only 2 wins out of being in 4th and feeling very good about yourselves. That's an Orlando team that I love to hate, but that's a team that you would expect to be a playoff team. So if you get a win or two, you're right back in that conversation. I think that, again, it's going to depend game to game, and who knows who we're going to be playing and what the schedule looks like moving forward. Maybe that plays into it too. But it's if you're saying, hey, we're in a spot, if we get points, just hold serve. maybe we'll make a playoffs, and that might be enough for such a strange season.
Well, and I think the only thing that's important to keep in mind about that, because I was thinking about that earlier as well, but the fact that we can't score is going to at some point come back to bite us. It's a little bit different from the NFL adage of defense wins championships here, where we saw this in Disney. DC United can defend really well, but when you're in a tournament style thing and teams are throwing everything forward, they eventually get that one goal. If you can't get one back, it's trouble. And DC United obviously were able to a couple times in that tournament, pull a goal back, but it certainly wasn't pretty run of the play stuff. And so I think that's what worries me. Even if this team does get into the playoffs, and with as many teams that get in this year, they really ought to get into the playoffs, even if they're deep and they end up having to play a much better team. If they can't score goals, it's going to be a really, really, really quick trip to the playoffs this year, and then we're going to.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people in the comments
sitting here wondering. Obviously, there's a number of injuries. Go ahead, Tim.
Sorry, John, you cut out for a second. But yeah, there are a lot of people in the comments kind of asking, like, how much does the injury play into this? We touched a little bit about their not offensive players who are coming back from injury, but there's Rich in our comments is kind of saying that. Oh shoot, I lost it.
Oh man.
Sorry, there's another comment that came in. That parking the bus for 90 isn't really planning for long term. And John from RFK Refugees touched on that a little bit, as we are kind of bringing in the young players. We're kind of playing the old players. We're not really introducing a new system that's offensive. So it feels like we're a little bit stuck in the middle right now.
I think we're just waiting out 2020, honestly. And and that's, I guess we got to come to grips with that. This team's not making, like John said, this team's probably not scoring a goal in a playoff game and then advancing. You have to do that to win a playoff game. You can't just get a draw. But I think let's look to next year. Next year, it's a shame that Kamara will be a year older. Which I mean, I don't know if it's really a shame at this point because he can't score goals. But we'll have Ariel, we'll have Flores. Apparently, DC United are looking for a 10. That excites me. That is an offense there, and if you can somehow game plan or have some style of play between them, that'd be really good. This year, I think it's just we're full on Benny ball for the rest of the year, and that's okay. We're scraping by with what we can, and I mean that with the definition of Benny ball. There's two definitions of Benny ball. The first one is just defending full 90 like we saw tonight, but the other side of that, the other definition is getting the best result you can with what you have, and I think that's what Ben Olsen is doing and will continue to do for the rest of the year because he's not in a great situation. And look, we just got to accept that.
Yeah, and maybe
go ahead, John. Go ahead, Michael.
No, I was saying if you get some results in Orlando, you still are less than halfway through the season. Looking at total games, we played 10 games. We're expecting another 13 or so. Again, not announced yet. We're expecting that come sometime soon, hopefully this week.
Yeah.
So you still got more than half the season, but as we've talked about, those major attacking pieces, Flores is probably out for at least another month. Poirier is not coming back. Your major exciting players not coming back in. You've got guys who show flashes. I mean, I remember there's a section where Kevin Paredes took two guys on in the box and very nearly came through with a ball and had an opportunity to put it on goal. Julian Gressel, same kind of thing, making attacking runs down the wings. You've got a lot of guys who have individual creativity, and I, for one, worry a little bit about that and getting ground out if you say our first job is to not give up goals, don't go forward, don't take risks, because at some point you have to do that in order to make it happen.
I mean, I think we've touched on it, right? Like, that's kind of how we play the season, and then we get into the postseason, and we aren't able to score the goals. And we've seen that a couple times in the past several years. I don't know. We have comments kind of asking, is it okay? Did we prepare for this season? We did. You can't prepare for the injuries. I feel like everyone's heads are kind of spinning right now. There are no very clear answers. We're just kind of in a sticky situation.
Yeah, I think we can be not thrilled with the fact that this team is where it is, and also recognize that injuries just kicked our butt this year. I mean, there's no way to plan for 2-year designated players for an extended period of time, and obviously Flores took a little while to catch up. I'm not even sure he ever really got his legs under him, injured. And then at one point, 7 starters were injured. That's insane. That there's no team in the world that can compete with 7 starters injured. So it does hurt. Your heads are spinning. But I think regardless, we got to award a man of the match for tonight's game. We know Sam's going to pick Kevin Paredes, so let's go. Joshua, why don't you start us off tonight?
Oh, that's too easy. I was going to pull up the NYCFC bench, but no, I'm just kidding. Seitz, definitely man of the match tonight. He faced 14 shots. No one else on our teams tried to shoot at the goal, which is their job. He did his job and got us a point where we didn't really deserve it. Well, I guess we did deserve it because we defended so well, but he kept the balls out of the net. Props to Seitz.
Yeah, and I'll go along with the same theme. I think you saw several opportunities from Donovan Pines where he continued to shut guys down, continued to play solid in the back. I was going to go with Seitz as well, but for the sake of diversity, I will say, Donovan Pines really, continues to grow into the role, and props to him. And I will give an honorable mention to the guy who did not play on the field. Ben Olsen did say that he wanted to come out tonight and not give up a goal and see if they could get something out of it, and they did. So congratulations, you got a point out of this game.
Oh, man.
Am I allowed to give my opinion? Yeah. I don't know if you were gonna skip me. I was gonna say Seitz. I think he had an amazing game. He had some amazing saves. Some of them he really pulled out, and we really thought they were going to go in the back of the net, and he was able to make that big save that kept us in the game. So I do think that Seitz does deserve man of the match. I also think Kevin played a really great game tonight. I think that he showed some skill and some swagger, and he did a lot on the field, and there was one moment when he kind of trapped the ball, and you could tell that all his eyes were on the goal, and I think it's great that a young kid is kind of bringing it on himself. We've heard that a lot in interviews. So, sure, if I'm going to be assigned my man of the match, I'm not mad it's Kevin, but I also think that Seitz did a really good job.
I wasn't sure for a minute there if Sam was legally allowed to give man of the match to anyone not named Kevin Paredes, but he did have a good game. I'll give you that, Sam. For me, I'm going to give it to Frederick Briant. I thought he played really well tonight. He's still banged up. He got hurt a couple games ago, missed some time. He's certainly not at 100%, wearing the armband, leading that back line that contributed greatly, obviously, to the clean sheet tonight. But I think between him and Donovan, obviously, both playing great. Seitz for the clean sheet. He was my man of the match the other night. And even Joseph Moore deserves a shout because my man is just not a center back, and he's being asked to play one. So, but for me, Frederick Briant is the man of the match. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention our friends at Across the Pond tonight. We appreciate the support they've given us this season. Of course, you can use the promo code podcast for 5% off your dine-in or takeout order with Across the Pond. And I know they're probably just as excited as the 4 of us are for the Premier League to come back in just 5 days. We're looking forward to that. And of course, you can watch all of the soccer and all of the sports at Across the Pond in DuPont Circle. So looking ahead here, guys, obviously we mentioned DC United. They host the Red Bulls on Saturday. Hopefully we'll have the remainder of the season, or at least the next iteration of games being released midweek. The Spirit were back in action on Saturday, and they lost, unfortunately, to Sky Blue 2-1. I did not have a chance to catch that
it's
game.
Pew.
Any takeaways?
Pew is good, and we shouldn't have let her go.
Also, we had a good game. Their equalizer came pretty late. I think we deserved the draw in that game, so it's pretty unfortunate that we couldn't get that one. You're right. It was sad to see that we didn't have Pew anymore. She was literally playing for the other side. But I think this is a team that can build upon that and do great things moving forward. They're a pretty young team, too. I think they were the youngest in Orlando for their starting 11 for most games.
In Salt Lake?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
In Utah, sorry.
And I do, I'm very happy to see the Spirit back and playing games. I don't think we have a good idea of what the rest of the season looks like, aside from the games they have currently scheduled, but I'm certainly glad to have them still playing. I think we were worried that they might be over after the tournament of the summer, but the more games we can get from them, the better.
Yeah, and every time I look at our show notes, if I didn't want watch most of the Loudoun United games, I would be confused that it's just a misprint that every week we've played Hartford and we've lost to Hartford. Unfortunately, they lost yesterday again for like the 900th time this season to Hartford 2-1. But they're back in action on Saturday as well against the Bethlehem Steel. That's it for this week. What else did I miss, guys?
I don't think anything. I think it's good that DC United has a midweek break. Ben mentioned it. Everyone's tired. They probably need some time away from each other. It's very heartening in all the press conferences to hear that this team gets along so well, and they really do believe in each other. But that being said, they also deserve a day or two without seeing each other. So hopefully that does really great things, and we're able to come away with another great result against New Jersey next weekend.
And, I'm like, semi-related note, I'm just glad that these games have all happened. Most of them happened on time. Obviously we're still in the middle of a global pandemic, but the fact that these teams are taking things seriously, doing testing, and haven't had games disrupted for testing or for COVID since Orlando, and even then just to a small degree, got to give them a lot of credit for figuring out a protocol, making it work, and I'm just happy to have them back.
Absolutely. Well said. Guys, I think with that, we'll wrap the show for tonight. Thanks to all of our followers for joining us tonight. We look forward to talking to you again after hopefully 3 points at home against the Red Bulls on Saturday night. But this has been Tried and True, the D-Shade Postgame Podcast presented by Heineken.
The bad news is that everyone is a potential victim. But the good news is that everyone is a potential solution. Sensitize the masses to sanitize. Keep a social distance and quarantine. Stop!
The coronavirus is sweeping over mankind.
Everybody must be alert. It's a global pandemic we can never take for granted. Kila mtu must be alert. It's a matter of life we can never take for granted. Discipline and personal hygiene, and make sure you regularly wash your hands. Keep a distance from everyone. Report anything like a symptom. Serious fever is a symptom. Dry cough is a symptom. Walkway tamula is a symptom. Itchy eyes and flu is a symptom.
Butabusiga betemu batanalwala ulako omwoyo gw'eggwanga mulabira ku itale abasinga bafudde okuwebala kisingako bujjanjaba. The coronavirus is sweeping over mankind.
Everybody must be alert. It's a global pandemic we can never take for granted. It's a matter of life we can never take for granted.
The coronavirus is sweeping over mankind.
Everybody must be alert.